is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, and we're back. I'm an author, psychologist, and speaker. Every week we talk about how to love ourselves, others, and higher nature, how to improve our finances, career, relationships, spirituality, our health, and well-being. And today we have a very interesting and very pertinent topic. It is how to resist evil and triumph over tragedy. And we're facing a lot of challenges this year and the last couple of years with the virus, with war, with health issues. And we have a fascinating guest today, a good friend, Pablo Zaragoza, who actually I met a couple of years ago at the Miami Book Festival. He's a great novelist. He's written over actually 13 novels now. And before that, he was a medical doctor for over 30 years. He worked actually in the Florida prisons. He had contact with Eileen Wuornos, the notorious serial killer that was immortalized in the movie Monster. And he's worked a lot with a lot of people in prison as well as other patients to help them. And in his writing, he's won numerous awards, first place, and also finalist awards in international competitions. He's a father of 3 children, and he loves gardening. Welcome, Pablo, to the show.
Well, it's nice to be there, my friend. How are you doing?
Great. I'm glad to have you back. You got a latest book that's very fascinating. It's called The Reluctant Nazi, that I think just came out, and it's very fascinating. Oh, it's upside down. Okay, there it is. Okay. No wonder he's reluctant. He's upside down. Okay. All right. And this is a fascinating book, and I want to get into it. I'll just tell you a little bit of what I see here and what you told me. It's a young man who joins the SS, which is the kind of paramilitary part of the Nazi Germany. And he rises to the ranks. He works with Himmler, the notorious Gestapo head. And I think they steal art and other things and gold and jewelry from Jewish individuals that they have victims. And Himmler says to him, I want every scrap of gold these ignorant animals have, their teeth, their crosses, their stars of David from the banks, jewelry stores, so they can build vast wealth for the party. Now he's into this apparently, and then I guess he changes his tune later on when he hears about Hitler's final solution to kill all the Jews, and he has a new wife and all that, and they kind of steal everything back. Tell us what happened in this story. This is pretty fascinating.
Well, he gets involved with these folks at an early age during the early 30s.
Yes.
And he's swept up in the Nazi fervor. Once he starts actually seeing what they do in Poland and in the Eastern Front by these squads of individuals mowing down people, stealing from them, he says, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yes.
I'm not here to steal from cadavers. I'm not here to brutalize innocent people.
Yes.
I'm here to fight for the fatherland. I have no problem with that, but this is not fighting. This is murder.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Okay, so Pablo, so initially he steals on behalf of Nazi Germany the gold and the jewelry from these the victims, right? The Jewish victims.
Right.
Now later, does he steal it back for his own personal use, or does he steal it back for like organizations to give it back to the Jewish people?
Well, eventually he does help Simon Wiesenthal keep his foundation going.
Yes.
He does give monies back to the Jewish community and gets recognition for that. Yes. But initially, him and his second wife, Irma,
right,
who's been put into his sphere by the party because they want to keep eyes on him totally.
Yes.
And she also becomes of the same mind that he has, that these people are just thieves. Yes. And so they funnel funds away from their hoards of gold and jewelry and so forth. And they begin to funnel it away, but also he's been charged to put funds into special operations. That's Penimundo, the rocket factories, yes. The crazy huge lens that Hitler wants to put up in the sky to direct the sunlight to burn villages away. Wow. The jet plane project, all these super weapons that supposedly they were building to be able to dominate the world. Also heavy water experiments to be able to produce atomic bombs. Wow. All of these things, he has the control of the funds.
Yes.
And by controlling the funds, he also can stifle them, and he does so.
I see, okay. So he has kind of a change of heart, but was there a point, was he tempted at some point to just say, hey, heck with this, I'm taking this money and leaving the country or something? Or
all
not?
the time, all the time. He's afraid. He's paranoid.
Okay.
He wants to be able to escape, but Irma says you can't escape because these people have agents all over the world, and we're not going to be able to escape completely until these people are in the ground.
I see. So his name is Hans, the protagonist, right? And then Irma is his second wife, apparently in the book.
Yes, Irma.
Okay, what happened to the first wife? Was she a good person?
The first wife also kind of she's directed to keep the spy on him, and she sends reports back to Goering and Himmler and so forth. Okay. But she also becomes, instead of an empty vessel, she becomes enamored with him, and she gives him a son. But in doing so, the child dies in utero, and she becomes septic and dies.
Oh, wow. Tragedy. Okay. So interesting. Now, is Irma his conscience? In psychology, we have what's called the superego. You may have heard of the id, ego, superego. Id is like the spontaneous, like instinct of getting what you want, right? Instant gratification. So that might say, hey, take the money, steal it, run. Superego.
He wants to go and run away because he can't take it anymore. He has all this paranoid pressure on him.
Okay.
He's afraid that he's being watched. He's afraid that at any moment these jackals are going to eliminate him.
Yes.
And so he's fearful for his life and his family.
I see.
But Irma keeps him. Irma's logic. Yes. She says, "No, you can't do this now. Yes. It's not time. We're not ready to do it." Okay. So she's the counterbalance to his flight.
I see. So she's kind of what we call her the ego. Ego is rational mind, and then the superego is conscience. So she's probably saying, okay, let's plan it carefully, but also let's give back or help in some ways, possibly.
Sure, absolutely.
And I guess a lot of wives, good wives, I would imagine, or good husbands are that way to their spouse.
We would love that to be the case.
They're the conscience, right?
I have a gem because she keeps me straight all the time.
You have a great partner. Like if you want to eat all the pumpkin cake, and she says, "No, you can't do it. It's bad for you." You ever get that?
That's right. No. She makes sure that we eat healthy, that we stay healthy, that I go and do my gym and all these kinds of things. So, in a sense, she's Irma trying to make sure that I stay alive.
That's awesome. Well, in some way, the Hans has Irma to keep him alive, right? The same way.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So, in terms of this, all great novelists, Pablo, show character arc, right? The transformation of the protagonist. So, at the end, he's working with Simon Wiesenthal, the great Nazi hunter. Trying to get justice for the Jewish people. And helping to, find Hitler at the end or something like that. They're talking.
At the end, he's assigned to go to Argentina because there have been reports, photographic evidence that he might be alive, and so he does go with a fella, and they go to this villa, which supposedly he's been living at.
Yes.
And they find a grave. And they unearth the grave, and there he is, dead, finally. And so that all that hoopla about him being burned after he shot himself in the Fuhrer bunker was all false. It was all false.
Okay.
He had escaped. Escaped through Norway via a submarine to Argentina. See, they had been funneling funds into Latin America, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, to be able to set themselves up in industry in case it fell apart.
Interesting. Now, this sounds like a fictional fact. I mean, in reality, Hitler did die in the bunker, or is this an alternative theory that you're developing?
There is photographic evidence that he was still alive for a while.
Interesting.
After the
so it's like an alternative theory.
Yeah, it's an alternative ending to World War II. The Russians only recently have allowed DNA confirmation of his death.
Interesting.
But there's still a lot of questions.
I see. And then I think Adolf Eichmann was found in Argentina. Some of the Nazis did escape.
There's a large colony of Germans, expatriates there in Argentina. Yes. In this area, one particular area of Argentina which looks a lot like Switzerland or Bavaria.
Interesting.
And so they've built chalets there, and they have wineries there, and they do have a lot of industrial clout.
Right. You think that any of them are still alive? I mean, this has been like 100 years ago, right, or something.
Almost. The originators may not be around, but their descendants are. Their children are.
I see.
And the philosophy probably has stuck with them for a good long time.
Right. Exactly. Was it Mengele, one of the doctors that experimented?
Mengele was supposed to be in Brazil and Paraguay.
Wow.
And they've confirmed his death.
I see. So go back to the arc of the development. Now, you said he was motivated initially by, I guess, prior to being a part of this organization, the Nazi SS,
right.
And then he's motivated by fear, I guess, that they're persecuting him, and maybe greed a little bit, and also, whatever it is, right? But at the end, he's motivated by helping, right? By justice.
Right. He goes through that transformation because he's seen the horror of war.
Yes.
The bodies, the burnt corpses,
yes.
The senseless killings.
Yes.
And he's deeply motivated by all of this. He's a Catholic.
Right.
Although during the Nazi National Socialism persecuted Christians as well as Jews.
Yes.
A lot of priests died in the concentration camps as well.
Yes.
As did gypsies and other nationalities.
Right. Exactly.
So he definitely has. He feels deeply moved by these deaths.
I see. Now, one interesting thing about you, I like Pablo when I met you at the book fair in Miami, which we missed, right? It was a lot of fun.
Right.
Is the idea that you've worked with some of the most notorious, criminals, right, in the Florida state prisons as a medical doctor. And if you came across Eileen Wuornos, which you mentioned, the serial killer of men that was in the movie Monster, and probably others like that, who we can call them, I guess, sociopaths, you can call them, sadists or narcissists, whatever you want to call them. Unfortunately,
right.
Although we do talk about love. Love University is about redemption, compassion, and love. And you mentioned that sometimes you can find that as well among yourself and also helping some of these people. But here's a question I want to ask you, and this actually goes to this whole Nazi Germany tragedy: is why do people follow evil leaders? And the famous study with Milgram Shock Experiment, where they had students volunteer to be a part of this, and then they had some guy in the other room, and they said, okay, he made a mistake on this task, give him a shock. And they keep increasing the shocks until 450 volts, which actually almost can kill a person. And just before the final volts, the guy, I got a heart problem. And they found that 2/3 of the student subjects would actually shock him all the way, probably almost to death. And people were shocked. This was like in the 60s, soon after Adolf Eichmann's trial, in Nazi Germany. So Milgram decided, hey, let's study this obedience to authority idea. And he found that it replicated among other countries, and even more recently, these findings still hold. The 2/3 people who do it. Now, the only exceptions are, for example, if the person that you're shocking is right next to you, like personally close to you.
Right.
Or, for example, if there's two experimenters, one says shock, one says don't shock. Or if the other people in the room, the other students who are Confederates actually, they say don't do it, so you have a social consensus. So there are some exceptions to this rule that they would actually shock him all the way to almost death. So tell us about that. What is your take on this obedience to authority, resistance to negative evil authority?
Well, unfortunately, most of our population are lemmings. They'll go to the edge and jump off the cliff.
Okay. Tell me, what is a lemming? Tell us about that.
A lemming is a little creature, small, tiny little animal.
Okay.
Is in a packs of them. In Madagascar, they sometimes when the population gets too big, they go to the edge of the cliff and jump off, killing themselves.
Wow.
There's also a social experiment where they divided students up into guards and prisoners.
Zimbardo
and yep. And you found out that dehumanizing attitudes of people over time, where you become so wrapped up in your authority that you forget to be human.
Exactly. Yeah. 1/3 of the students in the study who were guards became sadistic.
Yeah.
They would strip them naked, They would not let them throw away the feces in the bucket, and they would have to clean the toilet with their hands. At some point, they even fired fire extinguishers at them. And these were students.
Right.
These are all college. So they had to discontinue the study after a few days. People would have nervous breakdowns. So a couple of things they found from that study, maybe Pablo, you saw this as you did the research, is something called routinizing the task, which basically means that you give a number to people. For example, Nazi Germany, they give numbers to prisoners. Also in prison, you're no longer a human, right? You're kind of dehumanized.
You're a number.
You're a number, right? So, let's take 3, 4, 5, 6 and give them solution number 2, 5, 3, which is gas chamber. But you don't say, father of 4, this, Ralph, human being. You make them a number. So that's one thing that can actually, unfortunately, gear people to these violent and sadistic acts.
Well, in Nazi Germany, what they did was, instead of putting a bullet in the back of your head, which was initially done in the conquest of Poland,
yes,
when they collected people and executed them, they sent out squads with portable gas chambers.
Wow.
And they just put people in. They didn't have to see their gas. They didn't have to see them die.
Wow.
They just, were able to get them out because of the demoralizing situation that they had when they had people being shot, when they were shooting children, when they were shooting women, old persons.
Yes.
They said, no, we can't do that anymore. We have to do it systematically in a way that dehumanizes these people. And so that's how the gas chambers in Auschwitz became available to them. And they were only people in a line. And they didn't see the gasping for air, the horror in people's eyes. No, they didn't see any of that because they didn't even clean the gas chambers out. These were people who the capos in the concentration camps, who cleaned out the ovens, who put the people in the landfills where they threw lime over them to keep away the stench.
Wow.
And so they tried to make it as dehumanizing as possible because they knew that if people saw these things, they would be revolted by them.
Definitely. Yeah, let's go back to the Milgram experiment. When the person you're shocking is far away, it's like the idea that you can kill at a distance easier. In the old days, you have to kill someone face to face and see the blood. And that's much more difficult. But now, you hit a button, the bomb explodes, you don't see anything happening. And the other idea is that, a lot of these Germans, they say before the war, were just average, middle class family people. They had jobs, they sent their kids to school. They weren't necessarily sadistic or evil in any way, but then all of a sudden a lot of things changed among some people. And one thing that they talk about, is...
Go right ahead,
okay, I know you have some ideas. Is diffusion of responsibility, Pablo. You've heard this idea that if other people are present, you think that someone else is going to, do something to help someone else, so you don't do it, and therefore no one does anything because the responsibility is spread out. So tell us about that.
And many of these camps were far away from the population. People had heard about them, but they never saw anything, and they said, "Well, we were in Village X.
Yes.
We heard of these things, but we never saw it."
Right.
And so, this happens even today.
Yes.
In places where they have, isolated populations where they can say, well, we never saw this happen.
Yes.
And it's very easy to say, well, it didn't happen because we didn't see it.
Definitely. Well, also one thing at the end of the book, Pablo, you have something interesting. I guess this guy's gone through the journey. Hans, he's helped, get the money back, and then he's helped Simon Wiesenthal. But he said he's in Austria in 2005, talking to the Wiesenthal, and he says that they saw Nazi youth even today. They're seeing them walking around with leather jackets and shaved heads and swastikas. And he says to the Wiesenthal, they're coming back. The hooligans haven't read about the atrocities the leaders committed. They tell them that unemployment is due to the brown man working for less money and that their country will soon belong to these people. So, tell us, Paul, the idea of scapegoating, where you blame someone else for, problems, issues outside of yourself, and then that creates the idea of violence. Tell us about that. Is that occurring in today's society?
Oh, I think it is. I think we were blaming other people for our own problems. I do believe that. People have always kind of blamed either Hispanics for taking their jobs or blacks for taking their jobs.
Right.
And, it's this culture of blaming someone else for your own problems. If we didn't have, if we didn't have quotas, I would have gone into medical school. Or if there weren't racial preferences, I would have had this job. Instead of looking in yourself, were you the best qualified person for the job?
Right.
And so we want to blame someone else for our own shortcomings.
Yes.
This is prevalent even today.
Definitely. So unfortunately, Nazism and other groups may have some appeal to certain young people that have these kind of ideas. The so-called idealistic aspect of having, their society as superior. But let's talk about the other side. I mean, this is, kind of negative, and this is over 80 years ago, but it's still very pertinent today. The whole idea of the prejudice and also hate. But there is also meaning and love. Now, you've probably researched one of the great psychiatrists, Viktor Frankl, who actually was in the Nazi concentration camps as a medical doctor.
Oh, yes.
During Nazi Germany. And he observed that there are some men that are very strong and sturdy, and they died after a very short time in the camp. They gave up. Other men were very small and scrawny, but they survived the whole 4 or 5 years. And because those guys had a will to meaning, they had a purpose for living beyond just the everyday thing. Some of them wanted to write a book or maybe see their grandchildren or children graduate from college. That was what drove them to survive camps.
And a lot of them had faith.
Yes.
Exactly. A lot of it. Faith moves mountains. If you believe, then you can't give up.
Definitely.
Because you know that if you give up, you're asking for death, and you don't want to. Only the Lord can give you death. So you believe that if you commit this act of violence on yourself, you won't see the day of glory. So again, faith had a lot to do with people surviving.
Definitely, yeah. We call it the higher nature, which people have different beliefs, God, spirit, whatever it is. But it's something that drives you beyond yourself, the search for meaning, according to Viktor Frankl and other psychologists or psychiatrists. And he talked about the idea that we have to find a meaning in the work we do or doing some good deeds for others, making a connection, a loving connection with other people. Establishing what I call a legacy of love in some ways. Like what you leave behind, once you're gone, is that love that you had, right? Love for your family, love through your work, love through things that you've done. And in your case, apparently your love for your books. You're a great researcher. You've done a lot of work on this, and also a great writer. And we were talking earlier about your discipline for this, because let's say there are writers out there that maybe have writer's block. People starting out, maybe they're doing it for a while, but it's hard for them to really keep that production going. Tell us a little bit about what keeps you going. I know you have a great partner, but what is your discipline like? How do you do that writing every day?
Oh, well, I get up and unfortunately these characters talk to me in my sleep. Don't give me much chance. Don't give me much chance of rest sometimes. And so I come to the typewriter and I've got dialogue that's at least a couple hours long already planned.
Wow.
And so I come in and kind of unload this on my computer.
Yes.
Trying to make sure that there's a flow and there's continuity and there's something that flows naturally.
Yes.
And so we work on that basis. I'm not much for outlining books ahead of time. I'm terrible at doing that. I just let it flow.
Okay, that makes
and
sense.
it works for me. Not everybody's like that. Some people have to draw little stick figures and write little paragraphs here and there to be able and outline it. I don't. I just know that these characters had a life, and I'm trying to portray it as best I can.
Okay, interesting. I've heard that about some of the authors that have that great ability to channel the the characters through the writing.
The character.
Yes. Now you did mention something that
Right.
you do write 6 to 8 hours a day, so you don't just lie in bed and just wake up whenever, right? And just so you have a
No, I'm very much. I can't stand the light, so as soon as it dawns and the light hits my face,
Right.
that's it. I wake up,
okay. Wake up, you
and
start,
so I get up and I start writing.
okay, and then you keep writing throughout the day. And I even asked you, do you have any hobbies? He says no, writing and a little gardening. That's it, right, Pablo? So your passion is writing. And if you remember Isaac Asimov, one of the most prolific authors of all time science fiction, he would write like 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever it was. And he loved to write. That's what he did. And his first wife divorced him because he never go anywhere with her. But his second wife realized his greatness and his creativity, so she actually supported him. So I guess you found a good partner that supports you in case.
Oh, Susie's a gem. She helps me write. She sometimes say, "Well, why don't you do this?" And then I say, "No, I don't like that. That's not me. Why don't you write it?" And he says, "Well, I can't write." And he says, "No, that's baloney. You write very well." And she does. She's writing a book now that I've encouraged her to do.
Yes.
But she's perfect. She edits for me. She makes sure that my T's are crossed and my I's are dotted, and the story makes sense.
Definitely.
And that's the important thing, that the story makes sense.
Exactly. Now, Pablo, I want to ask you a couple of questions. These are what we call questions of power, questions about you, and how you've transformed yourself, if you have. Has there been a failure in your life or apparent failure that has set you up for success in life that helped you transform in some way?
Oh, well, I believe that we're always transforming. We're always trying to improve ourselves. I started out as a pathologist. I then went into general medicine. And from there, we've done several different things. And this is about the third transformation that I've had.
I see.
So we're always transforming. We're
was
always
there a
trying.
specific failure? I mean, I know you've been divorced and other things. I mean, what's been the most painful?
That's a failure. That's a personal failure.
Okay. Did it help you overcome, something by learning from that in the future?
Oh, yeah. It helped me overcome a sense of that I did of self-worth. I didn't have self-worth at that point.
Okay.
And so I went into a depression, and it was very hard for me to get out of it.
Yes.
And so I started at that point, I started to write.
Oh.
And I started to write, I had 2 novels that came out of that transformation.
Yes.
One of them is called Armageddon.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about demons and so forth. Yes. And the other one is called Infectious Game, where the protagonist is a lady who uses bacteria in order to eliminate those that have caused her problems in life.
Okay.
And then we started our Madsen series. Now we're on Madsen Case 3, detective who is an African American in the 50s and 60s in New York City, and his ability to solve crimes. So it kind of pushed me into writing.
So you have kind of a wide variety of topics and interests in your writing. I remember Armageddon, we talked about. I like that, the whole spiritual take on it. And now you have this one here, Germany. Now, in terms of tweet, if you could write one tweet to the world, I know you're not a technical guy per se, but like a little phrase. What would be that little phrase you would write to the world to inspire?
Find your place and find your place. Everybody has a place. Everybody has a self-worth, and everybody has a purpose. And find that purpose and pursue it with vigor.
Yes, definitely. I like that. Now, I love this book. So, The Reluctant Nazi. If people want to get this book, where can they go to get it and learn more about you? Do you have a website or something, Pablo?
Oh, yes, we have a website. It's pablozaragozabooks.com.
Okay.
They can go there. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble.
Oh, perfect.
And we're vigorously looking at other avenues to be able to publisher's website, all these different places.
Okay.
And the Austin Macaulay website. Austin Macaulay's been very good to us.
Okay. What's your website? What's your website, Pablo? How do you say it?
pablozaragoza.com.
You'll spell it out for us?
pablozaragozabooks.com.
Okay, so Pablo is Pablo and then Zaragoza. How do you spell it?
That's the Zaragoza.
Pablo Zaragoza. That's a Latino name, right?
Yeah.
And I know you're
Yeah.
Cuban.
That's my mother's maiden name. That's in honor of her.
Oh, okay.
Because she has a lot to do with the formation.
Yes.
So it's Pablo Zaragoza Books.com.
Okay. Now, what can people take away? Because, again, the reluctant Nazi, I kind of like that title because we think of Nazi as, maybe evil and, hurting a lot of people. But he's reluctant.
Right.
He's reluctant. So part of him is pulling him back, maybe the superego, the spiritual side. So how do we apply that?
Right.
What's the lesson we can learn from the reluctant Nazi in life?
Well, that we all can change. Given the right circumstances, we don't have to follow the same path all the time.
Yes.
We can change, we can transform, we can redeem ourselves from the bad things that we've done by doing good, by providing for others, by showing charity, all these things.
Yes. Now, working in the prison systems, have you ever seen prisoners reform as far as you know, or become better during the work you did?
Oh, yes. I've seen definitely people who have transformed themselves.
Okay.
Have transformed themselves. Yes. Oh, yeah. And I've seen people who go from worse to worse.
Okay, that's unfortunate too. Okay. So it's in it's in your heart, your mind, and your soul
right.
to make these changes. And
absolutely.
It's always been wonderful having you on the show. I mean, we really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back again. I know you write so many books, so I'm sure they'll be pretty soon. Do you have any works you're coming out with soon? Are you working on
we have one that's called Palace of Wrinkles.
Okay, what's that about? It sounds like getting old. And
that's a series of short stories about this one place in Miami that was called the Palace of Wrinkles, but we have a twist. It's a synthesis of the Tales from the Crypt meets Tales of the Crypt meets the wrinkled set of Miami.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, it kind of reminds me of that'd be kind of crazy. Well, Ponce de Leon, they said it was searching for the fountain of youth. Maybe you could do a take on that.
There's one story that's very much like that, but it has a twist.
Oh, okay, I like that. Okay. So you're a Twilight Zone fanatic, I would imagine. Do you ever hear of the Twilight Zone?
Oh, God, Twilight Zone, all the Tales from the Crypt, the Crypt Keeper, all those things, not only in visual form on television, but also in the comic books.
Definitely.
I read a lot of those things.
Yes. Well, Pablo, again, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. If anyone wants to write into us to learn more about Pablo's work, they can reach us at loveuniversitylove@gmail.com, 310-226-8090. Visit us at loveuniversity.love. And again, Pablo, it's wonderful to have you on. You're a very compassionate guy. I'm surprised today, the research you did is amazing. And so you're very meticulous in your research. And I think you love to help people. And getting across a message that helps people through your novels is a wonderful thing to do. So Pablo, thank you again for being on the show. We're going to have you back on very soon.
Thank you, my friend. Keep in touch.
That was a great interview with Pablo Zaragoza, a good friend, award-winning novelist, and his book, The Reluctant Nazi, and how he really got into the whole idea of the horrors of Nazi Germany. But there was one man, young man, who transformed himself. He went from being part of that regime of evilness and hurting people, the Jews, and taking their money and their jewels and property, and then giving that back, stealing it away from them, and then having justice at the end. And also changing his own mindset, his own transformation from hate to love. And in many ways, people need to do that in our society today. Whether it's anger, whether it's jealousy, envy, these kind of destructive emotions, we can start to focus more on extending loving energy without expectation. The research shows that when you give to others, you actually feel much better than when you keep it, whether it's money or even your time and energy. So giving and loving is a very powerful antidote to much of what we suffer from, much of our pain. So this is Dr. Alex Avila. If you want to be part of Love University, our community, we have a lot of events where we meet through Zoom. We communicate with you guys. If you want to be on the show, if you have show ideas, you can reach us at 310-226-8090. Write us at loveuniversitylove@gmail.com. Visit us at loveuniversity.love. You can like us on Facebook at Love University Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Love Letter U Podcast. Subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud. Until next time, this is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, your professor of love, happiness, and transformation. Put away your notebooks, your iPads, your phones, and we'll see you next time, Dr. Avila.